Hello there. I hope all of you are doing well today. We have a fitting video for the NHL playoffs. We're doing a sports analysis for men's ice hockey. Just a quick background on rules. Closing the hand on the puck. Players cannot do that except for the goalies. Face-offs will be explained when we talk about ice rink dimensions. Delays of game can occur from shooting the puck out of the zone or the area, pushing the net out of its position, or too many men in the ice. High six. So if you're above the shoulder, if you bat it down or you score a goal, it is disallowed. Icing is when you, as a player, are in your own defending zone, shoot the puck to the other defending zone behind the opposing team's net. That is considered icing. Offsides is when you proceed the puck over the defending team's blue line. Skate position has a big factor in that. So if one of your skates is in the zone, but one of it's on the blue line, that is not offsides. Overtime during the regular season, 5-minute overtimes with shootouts, and 20-minute overtimes that can go on for as many as needed in the playoffs. Penalties, you have 2-minute minors, 5-minute majors, and 10-minute game misconducts or 5 minutes, depending on the length or depending on the penalty. Penalty shots are awarded when you pull the player behind during a breakaway or you push the net out of his position. Power plays are a result of a man advantage from a penalty. Shootouts occur after regular season overtimes, and there are penalty shots that go on for as long as needed until the one team cannot match the other team's goals. Ice hockey rinks. So the NHL is 200 by 85. International rinks are 197 by 98.4. So international rinks allow for a wider style of play, more space, more puck possession, slower pace of play, and a shooter's angle is not going to be as good when they're forced wide. Now we have 9 face-off spots. We have 2 in each defending/offending zone, 2 at the end of the neutral zones, and 1 in center ice. And we have 3 zones: neutral zone, the offensive zone, and the defensive zone. So, for example, if the Lightning are here and they are defending this zone, they have to go to this zone, the attacking zone, to score a goal. Now we look at some positions and positional demands. Hockey games are played with 6 men on the ice at all times. Unless a player has committed a penalty, then you get man advantage. But generally, you have a center, a left and right wing, left and right defense, and the goalie. Now we look at some skating demands. For the defense, they're going to skate, glide, and skate backwards more frequently and for longer times. Forwards are going to skate forward at moderate intensity more frequently. They're going to have higher intensity sprints compared to defensive men. This will be expanded upon further when we go into distances. The goalies need to be quick, explosive in their movements that are short in duration with interspersed rest and submaximal activity. They cannot go past center ice. That will be a penalty. So they can only skate within their own defending zone. And this is not fighting. Fighting's not a skating demand per se, but players need to be physical and fight players who are antagonizing or threatening players, especially star forwards. Now we look at some positional demands. Centers are involved with face-offs, where the puck goes, how the puck moves into breakout positions, scoring chances, and to protect a net in the defending zone from scoring opportunities. Right and left wings do similar demands, but they battle for puck possession more, dig into the corners, get the puck back to the center and the defensive men. They need to be physical and block the goalie's vision. Imagine you waving your stick in front of the goalie's face in order to try to get deflection into the net. And left wingers will generally shoot from the right wing position and right wingers from the left wing position. Right and left defensive men will have to back up the forwards and stop goals and high danger scoring opportunities. So if one defenseman goes to the breakaway position, the other defenseman needs to stay back for picking up a loose puck. They need to develop passing lanes, gain puck possession, move the puck out of the zone, tap cross ice passes, you name it. Now we look at the goalie. They need to stop the puck. They need to be quick, agile, flexible, and strong. And they can freeze the puck to stop offensive rushes, create passing opportunities, and communicate who's in front of the net so they can have the defensive men come in and stop them from make scoring opportunities. Some more physical demands. All players spend most of the game gliding forward, then skating forward, and then finally standing. Those are the top three movements. Those will be expanded on more. Players rely on the aerobic system for recovery between those bouts of action. They need to defend against an immense offensive attack. You have different movement patterns, and that will be expanded upon later. But those differences decrease and change depending on how long you go through in the game from the first to the third period and the accumulation of fatigue and potentially more overtimes. For example, like the Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins went to a 5 overtime game. So their movement patterns are going to be relatively slower and lackluster. I wouldn't say lackluster, but more fatigued compared to the first period of that game. And forward and defensemen perform more sprint starts and modern skating movements in a forward direction in the third period compared to the first two periods due to intensity and fatigue. Now we look at the movement patterns. Forward gliding is the top, followed by skating forward and moderate intensity and standing, gliding backward, struggling, forward start sprints, forward maximal sprints, and backward sprinting. Now we look at movement patterns and total distances accumulated. Defensemen will take longer shifts than forwards. They will accumulate more time on the ice. They skate at higher distances at a slower pace compared to offensive players who covered greater distances at a faster pace. The movement patterns of defensemen resemble handball players due to similar pace of play, size of the playing surface, larger playing field, you name it. Drop-offs occur between the first and the third period with regards to sprinting speeds and distances for every position. And this is seen across all field-based sports. The total distance covered is of roughly 4,606, of which high-intensity distance accumulated 2,042 meters of that. Sprint skating speed is higher in the first few periods compared to period 3 and overtime and beyond. And to continue on with defensemen, they covered 29% more skating in total than forwards and were on the ice longer. And as mentioned earlier, forwards performed more high intensity skating per minute. Work to rest ratio. This is a very demanding and physically tasking sport. They are generally in a 1-2 or 1-3 work to rest ratio. And depending on the situation, depending on penalty kills or power plays, in those 30 to 45 second shifts, it could be a 1-2 or 1-1 work to rest ratio. Especially if, say, it's Penguins, Red Wings, game 7, 3-2, and the Red Wings are desperate to score a goal. They're going to have a 1-1 work to rest ratio because it's the nature of the game. We look at intensity. Players performed lots of high intensity and sprint skating throughout the game. They spent a lot of time in 3 various intensity zones. Their creatine kinase was at a certain level in 24 hours post game, and heart rate loading related to the intensity of the skating and positively to post game CT levels. And shift duration average around 85.72 seconds of effective playing time and 42 seconds of stoppage. This repeated for 7.5 set times per period. Mean effective time of playing time per shift decreased over the periods. And it resulted in shorter distance covered from period 1-3. As mentioned previously, the number of sprints done was lower. Stoppage and best stretch. Then the thing is this, while all of those distances decrease and the speed decrease, stoppages and bench resting increase from each period. Heart rate for ice hockey players, they are near maximal heart rate levels during most shifts. And that heart rate continues to increase throughout the player's shift that lasts up to 65 seconds. And they will reach near or complete heart rate max during their shifts, where they glide 60% of the time and perform low to moderate intensity activities of 36% of the time. Though these heart rates recover, they remain elevated between shifts as they do not have a lot of rest time before they're back on the ice. Now and to continue on with heart rate of ice hockey players, there's a combination of physiological and psychological stresses that could contribute to this. Thermoregulatory demands. neural activity from upper and lower body movement, increased aerobic metabolism, elevated catecholamines, increased sympathetic neural activity, you name it. There's many different factors on top of some of the factors we've already mentioned that can contribute to that elevated heart rate throughout the game. And average heart rate, as mentioned, reached 92 to 96% of peak heart rate. And for most stats, when you look into the data, they are reaching near heart rate max for both forwards and both defensive men. Though defensive men are on the ice for longer, forwards obviously go for greater speeds. And because of that, they will be experiencing greater elevations in heart rate compared to defensive men. Now we look at some common injuries. We are going to be looking at juniors, we're going to be looking at collegiate and international. All three were chosen because each of these groups of players are similar to each other in the sense that many junior and hockey players are NHL caliber players at the beginning, roughly at 18. Differences in injury come down to equipment, fast and aggressive style of play, and the level of play. So for juniors and collegiate, they wear protection. For NHL players, no protection, they sustain more facial injuries at a rate more than twice than that of players wearing partial protection, and 7 times higher than wearing full protection. And 9 injuries were increased for players wearing no protection. And there's been many players who have lost their eyes due to the stick coming up into their eye during the play. Marian Hossa unfortunately poked the guy's eye out because of that. We look at junior hockey players. The injury rate was 11 per 1,000 player games. It varies, but their head and face injuries encompass 39%, and upper body, lower body, spine, and trunk. Under 20s, the face was involved 76% of the time, but interestingly, 18% of the time, it was called for a penalty. So it goes relatively unnoticed in the penalty box. In under 18s, concussions comprise 46% of injuries, 4.2 concussions per 1,000 player game hours. Checking to the head and the body was the most common reason for this. And 63% of those concussions caused by illegal hits. Penalty was called 53% of the time. That's a more noticeable injury. And most concussions occurred in the third period due to fatigue. Now we look at common injuries for college hockey players. The injury rate is one of the highest during the games, but practice rates are among the lowest. The injury rates do vary, but men's collegiate hockey has a higher risk of injury compared to women's hockey. Depending on studies, knees and concussions are generally the most common injuries among college players. Concussion rates are reported as 0.72 per 1,000 AEs in men and 0.82 for women. Some other common injuries include muscle strains, contusions, lacerations, AC joint sprains, ankle sprains, and player-to-player contact, player-to-board, puck, stick contact are common factors for why these injuries occur. Now we look at elite ice hockey players, international and NHL caliber players. The injury rate tends to be around 52, but can go from 53 to 84 per 1,000 player game hours, depending on the study that you look at. But those common injuries are still prevalent with lacerations, ligament strains, contusions, and fractures. Lacerations, head and neck area due to partial face and neck protection. Unfortunately, the most egregious example is Clint Malarchuk's throat being sliced during a game. That is one of the most common lacerations you can get, along with near the eye. AC joint, knee, and shoulder ligament sprains are common. ACL tears are surprisingly less common compared to soccer and football. Concussions and brain injuries are common, but they've decreased. It could be due to rule changes and a switch from a defensive to a offensive style play. Primarily, it's rules and more facial protection as well that could be a reason for that. And the most common mechanisms for that injury, as mentioned with collegiate, hits to the head, unexpected hits, open ice body checks, contact with the boards. And we're going to look at some key performance indicators for ice hockey. Time on ice, individual expected goals, on ice expected goals, and game score. Time on ice includes minutes played on the 5-on-5, power play, penalty kill, overtime, and so forth. Individual expected goals is how many goals the player is expected to score. and includes the type of shot, attempts taken, and other factors. On ice is, well, what are they expected to score on ice versus this team? And game score includes goals, assists, penalties drawn, taken, and you could take all this information and build your training protocol to better prepare your players to win games. And finally, we'll look at some sports specific tests. For speed, you can do some short skating sprints on the ice and do sprint tests over 40 yards with sprint times for the first 5, 10 yards off for ice performance. For strength and power, vertical jump for leg power, 1 rep max on compound lifts, as well as hand grip for strength tests for stick handling ability. You can also do the Wingate test and a yo-yo intermittent recovery test for anaerobic power and capacity. For agility, there's a lot of different stuff that you could actually take from different sports like soccer, football, handball, and you can actually apply those to the ice. Hexagon tests, L tests, a lot of those can actually be applied to the ice and off ice to test for agility. And shuttle runs are a good test for aerobic fitness on and off the ice. And that is it for today. I hope all of you have a great day.